So a question I get asked about a lot is, why am I waking up in the middle of the night several times? This is something that I see most frequently in women, especially of a certain age group, from about my age up, which is about 35 and up, but I certainly see it in males too. So I thought I'd do a little video talking about what are some of the potential reasons why someone might be waking in the middle of the night. So the first one is, let's talk about quickly with women specifically, because this is something I see a lot in women. And it's likely it can be due to lowering of your progesterone levels. The reason this can happen for women, specifically from the age of about 35 onwards, is because this is sort of when you're getting to the age of where perimenopause is starting to occur. What that essentially means is we're getting some changes to our hormone levels. So the reason this would occur, of course, is that as we're reaching, not older age, hopefully, but once we're getting to around 35 to sort of age 40, our egg levels are starting to, we're starting to run out of our eggs, essentially. And this can happen earlier in some women and later in other women. But essentially what happens is when we don't have as much eggs, we're not ovulating as often, we're not making as much of our sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone. Now, what can happen is most women tend to see a dip in their progesterone first. And you might find that you're experiencing a bit of estrogen dominance in this time. And your estrogen levels might actually not be too high. It's just that we see this dip in progesterone first, which effectively causes an imbalance in your estrogen and progesterone. It makes your estrogen seem higher than it actually is. And so the reason this is important to know when it comes to sleep is because progesterone really modulates our GABA receptors. And GABA is a inhibitory neurotransmitter, which essentially means that it makes you feel calmer, relaxed, and essentially sleepy. We want to see a lot more GABA in the evening hours and throughout the night. But as you can imagine, if you're somebody in this age group and your progesterone levels are starting to dip, it makes sense that we then aren't stimulating the GABA receptors as much as we originally would have. And then, of course, we can feel a little bit more stimulated and it's harder to sleep. And I often see a pattern where when you have lowered progesterone levels, you tend to sort of end up waking up throughout the night. So what's really important, I find, is really supporting at this age and at this time in your life, if you're finding this happening, really trying to make sure that you're supporting your progesterone levels as much as possible. And so what I find with people in the keto space, of course, is that, we're doing a lot of intermittent fasting, which is fantastic for menopause. This is really great because it's showing, we're seeing that BHB or beta hydroxybutyrate, which is a ketone, is really amazing for menopause. So it's really important that you do get some ketones floating around, and you can do this by being in a low carb state and by doing a lot of fasting. But here's the thing, when we are getting lowered levels of progesterone, it's really important to not fast at particular times of our cycle. So I've done a few videos on this as well. And if you're interested in this topic, I really love the work from Mindy Peltz. She talks a lot about syncing your fasting and being in ketosis around your cycle to help to regulate your sex hormones. And certainly this has really helped me to regulate my progesterone levels. So check that out, or check out some of my other videos. Another reason that people might be waking throughout the night, and this is obviously something then we'd see in males too, is just a higher CNS activity. So your central nervous system is just too high when you go to bed and throughout the night. And this can happen for several reasons. In a lot of people, it really just is that we're just viewing too much bright light. In the evenings, we're looking at our iPads, our phones, and we're just not sort of, preparing our central nervous system for sleep time. So it's really important in this case to make sure that you're viewing enough white light throughout the day, and then obviously avoiding that white light at night. Other things that can help with this as well is obviously trying not to eat too close to bedtime too. This can really help to avoid us having spikes in blood glucose levels and things like that. There are certain herbs as well that can be really helpful here. So obviously you might have heard of something called L-theanine. Now the reason L-theanine is useful is that it can also modulate our GABA levels. And as I said, GABA is really important for sleep. So I find that L-theanine is really useful in most people. I also like to pair that with a really good quality magnesium too. And you don't want to just get any magnesium. Magnesium glycinate is better for when it comes to relaxing the central nervous system. Other magnesiums like magnesium citrate and things like that are more for gut issues. So if you're having trouble relaxing, certainly magnesium glycinate is really, really useful. Other herbs like passion flower can also be quite useful. And then some people also find the use of magnesium, the use of melatonin great as well for sleep. What I would say with melatonin is your body does adapt a little bit to it. So maybe cycle it. Don't just be on a high dose every single night, ideally. Another thing that people don't often realize is they might be getting dips and troughs in their blood glucose throughout the night. And I don't always just see this in people that are doing low carb, but certainly everybody can get dips and troughs in their blood glucose. The reason for this is because in a lot of people, obviously you are going to be fasting throughout the night because you're asleep. So hopefully you are fasting. But in some people, if their blood glucose levels drop too low, then of course their body goes, oh, we need to put some glucose, some sugar into the bloodstream so that we don't die. And so it will stimulate gluconeogenesis. And one of the things that we need to make gluconeogenesis happen, or the production of endogenous glucose in the body, is we need cortisol. So it makes sense that if your blood glucose levels dip throughout the night too low, your body goes, oh, we need some more glucose. We need to make our own glucose because we're not eating. So we need to stimulate cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline to help release that glucose from the liver. So this could also be a cause. What I would say to people if they're thinking this may be an issue for them, you can get one of those continuous glucose monitors, and I find them really effective. They're relatively expensive, but you get them for 2 weeks time. And it's a really great way to sort of see how your blood glucose tracks generally. But I really like to see what's happening throughout the night. And I use this in people that are having trouble sleeping, so we can see, is your blood glucose levels dropping too low? What people find in this situation that helps is either having a little bit of fat just before bed. It can help to sort of just regulate their insulin levels and prevent the glucose dipping too much throughout the night. Some people even find that useful to use exogenous ketones before bed. I've certainly tried this myself, and I find that it does help. We tend to see people having trouble with dipping in their blood glucose probably more when they are quite lean. And so I find, for example, if I was to do a bigger fast, I find that night sometimes I notice more dips in my blood glucose levels, likely because I'm churning through my fat a little bit more and I'm just leaner than I was the day before slightly. So if you're finding this a problem, certainly try some exogenous ketones. I would say if you're going to use exogenous ketones, go for the ketone esters at least. Try to avoid the ketone salts. They're not as effective in most people. If you have any questions about this, let me know. But it's an interesting topic.